barriers prevent many people with disabilities from accessing their right to vote. While most people take the ease of voting for granted, those with disabilities face unique obstacles and barriers to voting. Tonight, we're observing Disability Voting Rights Week by hosting a panel discussion about the disabled voting experience. First, I want to specifically thank Elena Humphreys, founding member of the Accessible Community Task Force of Naperville, Vice Chair and Chair of the Subcommittee Accessibility and Art for the Bolingbrook Arts Council, and founder and chair of Bolingbrook Pride. And Tricia Hoover, grant writer for Adler University Institute for Public Safety and Social Justice, and disability advocate for the National Organization for Women, Illinois, for all their help in putting this program together. Voting rights and access to the polls is what the League is all about. People who are disabled must have that equal access. I'd like to introduce our panelists tonight. We have Brandy Johnson. Professor Johnson is a decorated and widely published assistant professor with Southern Illinois University Simmons Law School. While in private practice, Professor Johnson specialized in Illinois and Missouri workers' compensation law and appellate advocacy, and gained experience in premises liability, personal injury, products liability, and other areas of insurance defense. She serves on the board for the Illinois chapter of the United Spinal Association. Patti Gregory-Chang graduated from the University of Chicago Law School in 1988 and worked in the City of Chicago Law Department for 28 years. In 2016, Patti embarked on a second career, accepting the position of Director of Outreach for the National Federation of the Blind, the largest organization of blind people in the world. She is currently the second vice chair of the Illinois affiliate of the NFB and has served on its National Board of Directors, as well as working as National Scholarship Committee Chair for many years. And lastly, we have Rebecca Leader, who has served Will County residents for almost 10 years as a senior election analyst at the Will County Clerk's office. She assists and supervises elections, administers the Will County Clerk's website, and educates voters on social media and at events. Rebecca serves on the board of Bridges to a New Day, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping victims of domestic violence and providing therapy for those who cannot afford it. Thank you all for joining us tonight to share your knowledge and experiences. For those attending, you may put your questions in the chat or you can raise your hand. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. And now, Brandy, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Thank you for having me. First, it's an honor to be invited to come speak with you. I greatly appreciate it. As said, I am currently an assistant professor of law at Southern Illinois University Simmons Law School. One of the subjects I do teach is disability law. I am also just been a disability advocate in various groups and in writing and publishing about disability, even when I was in practice. I'm still a little in practice. I kept my foot in the door. But I wanted to start, I'm from Southern Illinois. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Carbondale, just think we're close to Kentucky. So we're about 5.5 hours downstate. And I also have worked in the St. Louis metro area. So I lived on the Illinois side, but worked in St. Louis. So I have had experience voting both in a rural area and in a very urban area. I just kind of want to start with talking about a reminder, if you have not registered to vote, to be sure to register to vote, and talk a little bit about how important it is as individuals with disabilities to actually organize and vote. Some of the laws that we have that gives us protections against disability discrimination, like 504 of the Rehabilitation Act or the Americans with Disabilities Act. There's also other voting rights acts that provide access for individuals with disabilities. Those were not easy to get. We had to have groups of individuals with disabilities, disability advocates, and their allies really organize and push and fight for the rights so that we can all enjoy accessible voting, or at least it's not perfect, but it's, you can imagine what it might have been like before we had these rights. So I encourage everyone to exercise those rights, and especially to research, because the way that we help pass laws, and we get laws passed, that we help develop policy that helps the disabled community, favors disabled communities, and deals with disabled community issues is partially by exercising our right to vote. And the politicians, the lawmakers, the elected officials that we put into office. So I would say, you know, whatever issue is really near and dear to your heart, research, learn about your candidates. I know it's not fun, and I'm just as guilty as the next person of not always doing my full diligence with regard to the research, but research your candidates and understand what issues are important to them so that you know whether they align with what your issues are. And, you know, I personally try to vote for individuals who understand issues that the disability community face and care about them. I understand they may not be able to fix everything, but at least having people willing to go out there and try to pass laws or talk about the reasons for them. Tammy Ducksworth is a great example here in Illinois. So the other thing I would say is, you know, develop a plan and execute it, especially if you have a disability. You know, a lot of times we have issues with transportation, or you might be able to develop a plan to vote in a more convenient location if you early vote. So we're going to talk a little bit about, I'll talk a little bit about some of the workarounds that I have discovered in the past. But, you know, I would say be aware of your deadlines, especially if you're doing mail-in voting or you plan on voting early, knowing when you can vote early, where you can vote early at, and develop a plan on how you're going to get there with regard to transportation and be ready and prepared. As far as I go, I'm a quadriplegic. When I was 19 years old, I voted for my first election when I was 18. And then when I was 19 years old, I suffered a spinal cord injury in my neck that left me a quadriplegic. So every other time I have voted since then, which has been at least every presidential election. I'll admit I haven't voted every local election. But every time I have gone to vote, I have now voted as someone with a disability. And I can tell you that to this day, for example, my assigned polling place, if I go on the day of the election, has the ballots that you have to fill in. You have to color in the lines, the little bubbles. I wasn't the best at coloring within the lines before I was injured. And now that I have trouble pushing a pen and staying within the lines and getting it dark enough, it's a really difficult thing for me. However, I have learned that if I early vote, I can pick a location that has a machine that's a touch machine where I can touch the screen. And that has made it a lot easier for me to vote. I don't really need assistance for the most part, although I have run into some that are almost too tall for me to reach some of the top of the screens. Depending on how high your wheelchair is, it's going to, and if you're like me and you have short arms, it's going to affect how far you can reach. So I purposely early vote. I have voted by mail. It took a lot of planning. I'm usually not that organized. So the only time I have done it is when I knew I would not be able to early vote and I would not be in the jurisdiction on the date of the election. But I found for me, it's easier just to go early vote. And I can pick a location that's not crowded, a location that's convenient, a date and time that's convenient for me when I can arrange transportation, because the world at least the state of Illinois and probably Missouri and Kentucky are probably very happy that I am not driving. We'll include Indiana in it. We're close enough to Indiana. They're probably happy that I am not loose on the roads behind a vehicle. So arranging transportation, I have to find a time that's convenient for my spouse to also go with me. And I would say, you know, for me, besides the height, I've also had some issues putting the ballot in the sleeve before I hand it back. Sometimes I've had a little bit of an issue with that, but usually it's not too bad if I plan it. And if I do the electronic voting where I get to touch the screen, it just prints it and I don't have anything to put in the sleeve. So it's another way for me to get around a challenge that I've experienced voting. And I am so sorry, I did not note when I started talking. So when I get near 13 minutes, please tell me. I have no problem talking for long periods of time. I will say sometimes this isn't an issue I personally deal with because I come with my own chair, but having talked to other individuals with disabilities, I know sometimes standing in line can be an issue. If you have to stand in line and there's no chairs available, you know, you either have to bring in your own chair to be prepared or, you know, check ahead of time to see if there's going to be chairs if there's a long wait. I've also run into, kind of on both ends, over-eager election workers that want to help me and basically more apathetic election workers that are not as interested in helping me. I will say that election workers I know do not get, a lot of you guys are either volunteers or not paid much. It's your time. I celebrate everyone that is an election worker. I think that you guys do a great thing and that should be applauded. But there are some things that is not, you know, unique to just election workers. We face these problems across the board. So for example, I might go and someone just assumes that I need someone to assist me and they already have the form out and they're not asking me if I need assistance. Or someone might talk to my husband instead of me about what I need to vote because he's standing right there. And that would be, if you are an election worker, I would just recommend be sure you talk to the individual with the disability and ask them what they need. Ask them if they need help. And if I say yes, great, give me the form. And, you know, I would say if you are an individual with a disability, know that if you do need assistance, you're going to have to sign a form. So if you need special pens or you need something along those lines to sign a form swearing that you need assistance because of your physical disability, then be prepared to have that form signed. You can pick who can help you. You can also have election workers help you. It's my understanding if an election worker helps you, they need to have someone from both parties. So you have two people helping you, not just one, which kind of defeats the purpose of a private vote. But I honestly can also say that I have never had two. But I think I've only had assistance once that wasn't my husband when I had assistance, and that was because of the fill in the bubble thing. So I was a little paranoid. I wanted to make sure I didn't color outside the lines enough that my vote would get tossed. So those were the main barriers that I have run into, other than when you're in a rural area, sometimes it's in a church or a facility that is not as accessible as it maybe should be or could be, or while you might be able to get it in the building, getting around the building might have barriers that we're not foreseeing. The space might not be big enough to put all of the voting booths that they need. Plus, when people get in there, it gets crowded and you don't have a whole lot of area. So again, you know, be aware if that's something where your voting place is that way, maybe check it out ahead of time and then find out, can I early vote? Can I curbside vote? What's involved with curbside voting, and know your deadlines for early voting, curbside voting, voting by mail, to make sure that you do everything that you dot your I's and cross your T's. And I would say, you know, I think I've kind of talked about some of these solutions, but that's mainly kind of along the lines of just some other solutions that I thought of. If you're unable to stand, you can ask for a chair. If they don't have a chair available, you can ask to be moved to the front of the line. You can ask that your spot in line be held and you be contacted when it's time for you to come in and vote. Now that means you have to walk and go somewhere where you can sit and then come back, which isn't always the easiest, but it might be easier for you than standing in line. Or another option is to, again, curbside voting if it's allowed where you're at. So those are some of my recommendations to get over some of the barriers that I'm aware of and that I faced as someone with a physical mobility disability. And
Yeah,
less
thank you, Brandy. You know, it's those everyday things, right? That can really be challenging. Patti, we'd like to hear from you.
Awesome. It's interesting in reflecting what Brandy said. I thought this is going to be a background lesson in how much people with disabilities encounter some of the same barriers and in some ways encounter very different barriers depending on their disability. So let me begin with a thank you and a story. The thank you is I'm really pleased to see that this panel contains people with disabilities. I see so many times when some people are well-meaning, but send presenters who don't have the lived experience that Brandy and I and Rebecca do. So I am a blind person, I identify as a blind woman. And my story is really telling. So I became blind at 12 and I voted from the age of 18 pretty religiously until I was in my 40s. And when I hit the 40s, we finally got the right as blind people to have a private and independent ballot. The first time they introduced the touchscreens that Brandy mentioned, they're also audio output machines. You can put them in a mode that it works like a screen reader and I can hear the ballot and make my choices through a touchpad. I cried. I don't cry easily. I was a prosecuting attorney for 28 years. I walked in the polling place and the first time that I could independently and privately cast my ballot, I sat there and I was in tears. This is how big a deal it is to have the same voting rights as most people in our population enjoy. So let me talk to you a little bit about how I actually vote. I said we have audio machines. So when you go in and they change the card out in the audio machine, which is the same machine that Brandy mentioned, it just has different modes. They change the card out, so they turn it into an audio output machine, and then they go away, meaning the poll workers. I make my choices at the end. I print my ballot. There's a sleeve there. I can put it in the sleeve and then go over and put in a scanner. Now that's if I vote in person. And that is so much better than it used to be. It's not funny. Like if you are a blind person and you really want to vote independently and privately and be guaranteed your vote's going to count, you go in person. But especially during COVID, the disparities came to light in absentee balloting. So you take a mail-in ballot, okay? So first I have to order the thing, which Cook County finally made accessible last year. I couldn't even order a mail-in ballot accessibly until a year ago. And accessibly meaning that when I went on the web elements of the page were not properly labeled so that my screen reading software could grab those elements. So you get something that would say button, button, button. And in fact, I pointed out that the web page we were sent to for this particular event also had the same problem. I encounter link instead of saying what the link is. So that's a barrier that I encounter with mail-in balloting. Then you get then you can, once you request a mail-in ballot, you can actually in Illinois, because of recent legislation, I can request electronic ballot, a fillable ballot. So I get a link, go to the link, I can fill out the ballot on my computer, which is great. That part's perfectly accessible. Then you got to print it. And that assumes you have a printer. Then you got to sign it in the right space, which is not tactile. So at that point, I have to have a sighted person look at my ballot, and it's got to go in an envelope on the mail. Now, if you're good with lining up envelopes, I can print the envelope from a printer, but they won't let you use that envelope. You have to use the envelope they provided. So it's complicated in the mail-in system. And what we keep hearing, because we're trying to pass legislation for what's called electronic ballot return. 16 states already have it, but this would allow me to actually turn in my ballot electronically. So I wouldn't have to sign in a specific place. I wouldn't have to worry about the fact that my signature might not match, since my signature is vastly different than it was when I registered to vote at age 18. And I wouldn't have to deal with the element of the election. So mail-in balloting is pretty much fraught with barriers for people who are blind. It really helps some people with other disabilities, but for us, it's not so accessible. So some of the barriers I've encountered, sometimes I have to wait. Now I always go to the same place, and there's a guy named Bruce at my polling place who the minute I walk in, you hear Bruce, come here. So he knows what he's doing, but that happened because I sat there one time and I waited 4 hours to vote. They couldn't figure out how to use the machine, and they kept saying, why don't you just use an assistant? I'm like, no, I have the right to a private ballot. I'm going to sit here politely, but you need to call downtown and you need to figure it out. So they figured it out at my polling place, mostly because I'm stubborn. So some of the other barriers that we encounter relate to registration and political websites. Again, the accessibility barriers that come out on the web if they're not labeled, if they're not keeping heading structure in mind. Many of the barriers that I've encountered that are discouraging to voting are a lot less tangible. Brandy mentioned some of them. It's, the low expectations when you walk in the door. They assume you're going to use an assistant, or they talk to your husband, which has happened to me multiple times. We're gotten to the point now where my husband pretends like we're not together, which is pretty easy because he's Asian, so people assume we're not together anyway. But those kind of things discourage you from voting. If you know you're going to go in and you're going to encounter people who assume you can't sign your name, ask. Maybe I can't sign my name, but don't make assumptions. Please ask. Same thing with terminology. If you don't know how to address the fact that I am blind, how do you identify? The people with disabilities identify differently, and it's okay to ask. I happen to not be fond of certain terms like, differently abled. I don't care for the euphemisms. I am blind. It is what it is. But not everybody thinks the same way, so we need to ask. And same thing with help, ask. The advice that I would give is mostly general advice. The unwanted touching, when I'm trying to walk somewhere, people want to grab and pull me. And I think that, people just don't think. You wouldn't do that with someone who was sighted. So why is it okay to invade my physical space without asking? There's the same things that happen to me in the public. The low expectations that we encounter every day create unnecessary and unintended obstacles. So my best piece of advice is for people who are encountering people with disabilities in any setting. It's not specific to voting, and do things like this. The more you talk to us, the more you encounter us, the more comfortable you're going to be talking directly with us and having higher expectations for people with disabilities. We are above everything problem solvers. We do it every day, all day long. The environment is not built for us. It's built for people who don't have disabilities. So we have steps that wheelchair users might find difficult. We have many, many places where there's no way for a blind person to access a printed sign. And if you simply ask, we probably know a workaround. You know, I can take a picture with my phone and read a sign in about 5 seconds. But you wouldn't know that because you don't live it. So just recognize that we're the experts on our disability. And I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca.
Sorry, I had to mute myself. Well, Brandy and Patti basically said everything I was going to say. So they seem to be the experts on voting. But thank you guys for having me. This has really been an important topic for the Will County Clerk's Office for many years. Nancy Schultz-Voots was the former Will County Clerk, and her 2 daughters had disabilities. So when the ADA and the grants came in for us to be able to provide an assisted marking device, she jumped right on it. And we got people trained on it. We worked with people with disabilities to make sure that it was working exactly how we need it to. However, after Nancy left, that was about 20 years. And as we know, technology can start to get better and machines start to break. So Lauren, or another former one, it's a long story, but she purchased a new assisted device called the Verity Touch Writer. And that is the same device Brandy was talking about, where it's a touch screen. It also has a controller, and that controller has the headphone set up, and it will read to you your ballot. It has a controller that has Braille on it, so the Braille tells the individual how to go ahead and use the machine to vote on it. It prints out. We do provide a sleeve, but it's up to you if you want to use it or not, and then you put it into the scanner. I do have a picture of it. It's not a great one, but that's the machine. Sorry, because of course the blur. But it's brand new. So we've had to do all new training with our election judges on how to use this machine. So they've come in and they've done hands-on training with the machine, and we also created a video for them to watch online so that they can review it if they need to on election day, so that they can help somebody who comes in and needs to use it. The machine is on a little table stand, so it's very low, so that a wheelchair could roll right up to it. Let's see. These are available at all of our early voting locations in Will County and at every polling place in Will County. The other thing, we just actually recently did a ADA survey for all of our existing early voting locations and polling places to make sure that each place had enough handicap parking, had accessibility to get inside to each of the locations, had handrails. It was a complete survey that we completed that would hopefully make it easier for people with disabilities to get into their polling place or into the early voting location. And then we also, whenever we have to find a new location for whatever reason, we do go to the location and make sure that it is accessible for everyone and complete this survey. All right. In addition, at our polling places and early voting sites, we have wheelchair accessible voting. So it's a lower table voting booth that someone could sit in a chair at and vote. Unfortunately, it is fill in the bubble, but what's cool about our new machines is if you just kind of like put an X in the bubble or fill it in a little bit, the scanners will still read it. And we also have magnifiers so that if somebody does have a hard time reading the print, you will be able to utilize that to see it. As Brandy mentioned and Patti mentioned, you can get assistance. Our way to register now is to sign on a tablet. So we have tablets that are available. So when someone comes in, they let us know that they need assistance. We ask them if they need the assistance, and then the person who's assisting them can go ahead and they can fill out, the person assisting them fills out the affidavit saying that they're assisting them and that they are not going to encourage them how they're voting. So I feel like that's really good because it's allowing them to pick who they want and sign on the tablet. But you can also have 2 election judges, one from each party, come and help you if you do need assistance. Our office also has curbside voting. So if it's something that you wanted to do where you wanted to vote in person, you would call the Will County Clerk's office. You would set up a time during early voting or on election day. You would come to our office, or you would call the office and just say, you know, I'd like to curbside vote. And we would ask for the date and time you want to come and what your car looks like. You come in, usually it's me and another person come out with the ballot, and they fill it in the privacy of their car. So we step away and you can fill it out there. And I know that we also talked about vote by mail. So vote by mail is a good way if you want to vote in the privacy of your home. I understand now that there are some things that aren't great for every individual. But if you do need help filling it out at home, there is a thing on the envelope that the person who's helping fills out. And so we know that someone's helped you, just in case people are worried that other people are filling out other people's ballots. Because fraud is a big topic that people talk about with us. So we want to make sure people understand that it's not fraudulent in any way. And then, as Patti mentioned, we do the accessible ballot, where we send it to you online so that you can fill it in. But what we do is, where the signature is on the envelope, we hole punch it so that they can feel where it is for them to sign, so that they can sign in that spot. We thought that might make it a little bit easier for people who needed that. The other thing that our office does, and I'm pretty proud of it being in charge of the events, is we work with a lot of groups to come in to use our touch writer, to get used to it, to feel comfortable with it. We've worked with groups like Wilmington Transition School came in. The kids came in, they got a tour of our building, and then they actually got to vote a ballot. Like, it asked what's your favorite color, your favorite sport, and they got to use the touch writer and put the ballot through the machine. We've worked with Center for Independent Living, and we're having Trinity Services actually come in with a few groups to come and see how the touch writer works and be able to vote. I feel like sometimes if people get to use the touch writer, get to see what they're supposed to do, it helps a little bit for them to feel comfortable with it. And when they go in to vote, they already know what they're expecting and looking for. So we absolutely encourage that. I'll put my information and our website in the comments section. So if anybody wants to reach out to have a group come in, or knows of somebody who might want to have a group come in, they can reach out to me and we can set up a time. It doesn't have to be just for this election. It could be at any point. We really welcome that. With talking with Patti, I know our website isn't perfect, but our website company does follow the WCAG AA 2.1 guideline. So we try to make it as great as possible for everybody to use. I recently got my certification in web design, and one of the things they talked about was making sure things were accessible. So we have this presidential coming up in November, and then we have an April election. So my plan is in May to kind of redevelop our website again and make sure it's more accessible for those who need it. So Patti, I might be reaching out to you to get some help with that, so that we can make sure we're doing everything that we need to make sure it's accessible for everybody.
Absolutely. We do that kind of work all the time.
Love it. And then lastly, the other thing that we do, and we're required to by statute, but I think it's a good thing, is we provide a voting aid notice, and it's for the elderly and people with disabilities, and it just lists when registration dates are, when early voting is, what voting aids that we supply. So it talks about the touch writer, and it talks about the our curbside voting and the accessible vote by mail. It provides all that information. And so we send that out to like the senior center and to Trinity Services. So if there's other organizations, like I said, that we could email that voting aid to, and it can be put up or sent out to people, that would be amazing, because the more people we can reach with this information, the better our office is in serving people. So I think I covered everything. Let's see. So vote by mail and early voting ballots go out, or vote by mail ballots go out September 26th. And early voting starts September 26th at the Will County Clerk's office. So you can start coming in and voting as of September 26th at our office. We will have a touch writer there. So, and the nice thing about our office is we also have wheelchairs. So because it's a county building. So if somebody needs a wheelchair to come in, the security people will go get it, and they'll bring people in. There's seating there for individuals. So it's a great opportunity to vote early in our office. I'm forgetting the other dates right now because there's a lot of dates in my head, but if you go to our website, willcountyclerk.gov, we have all the dates of everything that's up and coming. I would also recommend, if you do have social media, to follow us on Facebook or Instagram or whatever platform you prefer, because we do like to post things about when dates are up and coming and things that are going on. So,
Rebecca, I wanted to ask, you mentioned making an appointment if you wanted curbside voting. Can
yes.
Can a disabled person show up at their polling place and request curbside voting on the spot?
So in most circumstances, you have to request it the day before at a polling place, just so that we can make sure that we've notified them that somebody will be coming in. However, we have had situations where when the polling place wasn't busy, that they were able to accommodate people who did want a curbside vote. We actually had a polling place in a fire station, and they opened the garage door for them to pull right into where the polling was taking place. So they were able to then fill out their ballot and actually physically put it through the machine.
Yeah, but you would, and so if you did do it at a polling location, you'd have to have the judge from either party, from both parties, go out to the car, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm only asking because I was poll watching once, and there were not that many election judges there, and they were saying, "Oh, we're so glad nobody's come because we don't have two judges to go out at the same time." You know?
Yeah. For some of the smaller elections, we're only required to have 3 judges. So it can be a little difficult for us to have a lot of curbside happening just because of the lack of judges at the location.
So question I had for you, Patti, was, or anyone really, another important thing for the League of Women Voters is voter education. Do you think that, the political parties, the League of Women Voters, any organization who is trying to educate voters, do you think they do a very good job of managing, reaching out to people with disabilities?
This is the first time I've ever been asked to speak to one. Now, that doesn't to say that someone else from our organization hasn't, but it's the first time I've been asked, which is why I started with kudos. You're bringing people with disabilities. I think that the rights of disabled voters has only really come to the forefront very heavily during COVID. The National Federation of Blind filed 35 lawsuits, won every one of them, which is astronomical, because so many states were not providing equal access to the ballot box and didn't want to provide equal access to the ballot box. And we're still in Illinois. Illinois does provide equal access at this point because we have the same rights as OCAVA voters, which is really what the ADA requires. And OCAVA voters, for those of you that don't know, are like the overseas voters. You have to provide equal access. If you do mail ballot return for OCAVA voters, you have to do it for people with disabilities. If you don't do it for OCAVA voters, then the law doesn't yet require, at least the federal law doesn't require. We're trying to pass a law in Illinois that would require the election authorities, and it gets complicated because Illinois is one of the states that every county is a separate election authority. So we're trying to pass a state law that would allow for a ballot return. And of course, some of the organizations that like to complain about security are raising concerns. There's lots of evidence now that shows that if you do it right, it's secure. There hasn't been a breach yet. So we're fighting that, they raise security and then legislators go, we can't do it without really looking at whether it really is a security concern. But anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent. There are laws that we should be looking at. There are laws that we're trying to pass. There's a task force that's working at it right now for Illinois. More information than you wanted. I did put in the chat a general information site. It's nfb.org/vote. It's a good site to learn about blind voters, how we vote, and what the laws are. And I suggest that people also go look at the Help America Vote Act.
I will also say I have never been asked to speak at something with regard to disabled voting, and I don't recall ever seeing any type of informational pamphlets or PSAs or any type of outreach with regard to individuals with disabilities and voting. It was kind of been trial by error for me. Now, granted, like Patti, a lot of my, I've been injured now since 1995. So a lot of that has been times that we are still developing the law, changing the law, and getting used to the law, and as well as getting used to individuals with disabilities being seen in public regularly. I think also individuals with disabilities tend to be a quieter group overall. We don't always make the ruckus that some other public interest groups do, and the louder voice you have, the more attention you get. And I think it is more recently that we are again returning to the organization, the grassroots support, and the advocacy to get back out there and be noticed.
Elena.
And COVID did really help that.
So something good that COVID did.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of that accessibility was improved during COVID for sure. Virtual stuff. But yeah, I've never, until I heard of Rev Up, I've never seen anybody advocate for voting with disabilities or educating around that, or really rallying those with disabilities to vote. I'm a graphic designer. I do some work for candidates. I don't think candidates have even thought about it. Honestly, I didn't think about it to even suggest it to the candidates that I do work for, and they get out information about registering to vote and early voting and all of that. But no one has ever thought about, like, oh, let's get some information out there about access for people with disabilities that I've ever worked with either. So I find it interesting.
So it's actually worse than that. I used to get so annoyed because, all the politicians in the train stations that pass out their pamphlets, they wouldn't hand me one. I mean, what? I don't vote? I don't count? I'm ignored? I mean, literally, they would give their spiels to anybody but me. So I think we have to get it on the political radar that we do have a voting bloc. We're 25% of the population. Now, we don't vote homogeneously, but we are a strong voting bloc if people would go after it. And they certainly shouldn't ignore us, which is what mostly they've done.
The other thing to keep in mind too is that you might not be disabled now, but it can happen at any time. And certainly as you age, you become less mobile. You might become less cognizant mentally. And so you might find yourself in a situation where having more access to voting will benefit you, even if it's not now, or benefit a loved one. My mother certainly didn't plan on having a disabled child. When I spent 19 years not having this disability, and we had to change a lot of things and a lot of lifestyle once my accident happened. And accidents happen. Having done personal injury for years now, accidents happen every day.
Another important thing to know is that well over 50% of folks with disabilities are not voting. You know, whether they're not even registered or they're not making it to the ballot, which is why it's so important to get this education out there and get people to register, get people to the polls.
Yeah, that website that I put out there has the statistics because the National Federation of Blind does statistics, at least on blind voters after every election. And it's interesting. It's improving very slightly, but we're still way below the general population in terms of percentage of people who actually vote.
And we are talking, we should point out, we're talking about physical disabilities, we're talking about blindness. We haven't really talked about hidden disabilities or mental disabilities. And I honestly am not educated enough with regard to those real life experiences for someone with cognitive disabilities or, you know, mental illness, mental disabilities that affects their voting rights. Maybe Rebecca can talk more about what you would do for them. But, you know, it might be able to impact how they read and understand a ballot. Even individuals who are older that may suffer small bouts of dementia.
So one of the questions I had too was, what about people under guardianship in Illinois? I don't know how that works. I don't know if Rebecca knows how that works. There was recently an article in the national press about people under guardianship rules in certain states are not allowed to vote or not allowed to vote freely. I don't know what the laws are in Illinois.
Yeah, that I'm not aware of. We haven't had anything that has addressed guardianship or any of those things. We've never had that issue arise. You know, people, we always say that anybody is eligible to vote if they're capable to be able to make their own choices. So we do have people who come in who may have a developmental issue and they have someone with them who is helping them vote. That's why we do like to have those groups come into our office so that we can talk with them with the students or the groups that they have who are transitioning so that they can learn what their options are. And it's good for us too, because we can figure out a way to reach them then with what their needs are.
So it sounds as if maybe they can have assistance like anybody else can have assistance.
Absolutely.
Yes, appropriately. Laura, do you have a question?
I do actually. I have many. This is blowing my head open as usually do with the league. One of the questions is there a champion within our legislative body that perhaps we can, or you can, as the experts in the field, talk to about, you know, some of these really heinous lapses in access to voting, because I'm just really shocked. But the other question I have, Illinois Now, and I'm the Illinois Now president, we work with Promote the Vote. And one of the women that is part of our coalition works with homeless people. And you were talking about those with mental issues. And I would love to see if there can be a discussion about how that is addressed across the state for those, in addition to everything that you're talking about, that there are people that don't realize that they can vote, that how they can vote is to use a shelter address or something like that, but any sort of outreach. And I don't know, honestly, since most of that committee is in the city of Chicago, I don't know how that affects us out in the suburbs, but that's just something that came to mind when you were talking, Rebecca.
I will say that the league has held voter registration events at pads at some of their facilities. They're not always tremendously successful. but we have gotten 1 or 2 people to register. I think it is a little challenging when you don't have an address to feel attached to your community in the same way, but certainly they should have, we want everyone to have that option. People
Yes.
are homeless for a lot of different reasons.
Can I jump in here just on a side point, please? So I've heard this several times, and I just want to reassure people that it's okay to use the word disability. I keep hearing people hesitate and then say issues, mental issues, vision issues, whatever. Disability, blind, deaf, unless someone with a disability wants you not to use those terms, just go ahead and say it. It's okay. I mean, we're much more comfortable with it than you probably are. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it was making me very uncomfortable.
You know what, Patty, I apologize. And I think Trisha, my friend, has told me that. And it is, like you said, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
And, I mean, it's like anything else, right? I am not the best at pronouns. They is a little
Mhm.
difficult for me. And thankfully, the people in my life that have changed and are using they give me grace. And as long as I'm making a legitimate effort, and I think the same goes with disability.
And
as
I
Patty
wasn't
is-
calling anybody out. I was just
Oh, no.
educating.
As Patty and I have had this discussion many times about, like, for example, identity first or person first language. And I honestly, as long as I'm not called crippled, don't really care. But it is very important to some people. And, again, ask, how would you like to be referred to?
And
So,
copy what you're hearing. I mean, if you're hearing us use the word disability, just use it.
so Patty, before this meeting started, you showed us something. So when I think about educating voters and going to websites, for example, is an important way. The league sponsors vote411.org as a important resource. I have no idea whether their website is accessible for blind people or not. But I'm wondering if you can share your screen.
I can. And tell me the website you want me to go to again.
Well, it might not work.
I know.
might get embarrassed. It's
You might.
411.org.
411 is in numbers. 411.
Yeah, number is 411.org. Vote411.org, right, Ann? Vote411.org.
Vote411.org. Okay, got it. I'm going to share my screen and you're all going to hear a screen reader. I will, for the benefit of those who are sighted in the audience, I will accommodate you by slowing it down so that you can understand what it says, because I understand it at high speed. So without further ado, here's the share. And you should be hearing my screen reader, which is how I access a computer. I'm going to go to Google. I'm going to go to Google. Come on. Here we go. And I'm going to slow it down a bit. Now,
Not
can you
actually
understand
hearing
that?
it.
Is that better?
Patty, the audio is not coming through.
Yeah, I don't
Oh,
think we can hear
Well,
it.
that's annoying.
But
Let me
you can
try it
hear
again. Yeah, I can definitely hear it. I thought I shared the sound, but apparently not. So let me try this again. Sorry. I think I just have to start again, maybe.
Take your time. I'm
It's annoying. I had it all set up, I swear. All right, so. Air sound. Checkbox checked. It is checked. Air screen.
Settings button drop down.
Now, can you hear it?
Yes.
Yes.
App switching. Address
Okay.
search bar edit. T type in text. Control plus L.
Try this again.
Audio settings button drop down. Address search bar edit. T type in text. Control plus L. G.
Right.
V. O. T. E. 4 4. 1 1. Period. O. R. G. Enter. Vote 411 Google Chrome. Vote
The
411
good news
Google
is you
Chrome page.
missed
Vote
it
411
at
page
high
two regions.
speed.
11 headings and 40 links there.
This is very slow.
Page.
Can
Vote
you
411 same page.
understand
Shift
this
the
or
main
do you
navigation.
need
Information
slow?
icon graphic. Become a poll worker. Today is never too early to help democracy. By signing up to be a poll worker, you can ensure that all voters have matching including voters with disabilities. Voters who need language assistance and voters who want to cast their ballot in person and
Lower?
match have positive experience at the polls. Link sign up today. Visit link graphic. Vote 411 logo. Toggle menu button. English button menu collapsed. English.
Okay, I'll assume you can understand. If you can't, let me know.
Link register to vote.
So that's a link registered to vote. Now, if that just said link and it wasn't that is properly labeled, it says link registered to vote. If it was not properly labeled, then I wouldn't know what it was. If it just says link, right?
Link donate.
Link donate, this is how
Voting
they
by
should
state.
be.
Voting in my state. Select your state. Combo box. Select your state. Link compare state.
Now
Compare.
let's see.
Combo box. Select your state.
So select your state.
Open list box. Vote 411. Banner
Ooh,
region.
it
Select
is
your state.
good
Combo
site.
box. Select your state. To
Somebody
change the
paid
selection, use the arrow
attention
keys.
to
List with 52 items. Select your state. To move an item, press the
Good
arrow keys.
job.
Alabama. To move an item, press the arrow keys.
Okay, we'll pretend we're from Alabama.
Enter. Permanent copy. Alabama voting information. Skip the main banner region. Sign up today. Link.
Now let me see if I
Vote
can
411
find
logo. Link toggle
something
menu button.
that
English button menu
isn't.
collapsed. Link register to vote.
This one's pretty good, although let's check heading structure.
Alabama heading level 1.
Okay.
Alabama voting information. Alabama heading level 1. Upcoming election dates and registration deadlines heading level 2. Registration deadlines heading level 3.
Okay, so this one is really good. Okay, it's not perfect because your heading structure, what I did was hit an H with my screen reader and it takes me to elements on the page that you would just see. They're headings. And the heading structure should be like an outline. Yeah, this is probably technically compliant, but not as usable as we'd like. And there's a difference between being WCAG compliant, which is generally the minimum that people do, and really having something tested by someone who is blind. Because if something takes me 50 keystrokes, it's probably technically accessible. But is that really usable if it takes you 2 keystrokes to do the same thing? Probably not. But that gives you good test of how a screen reader works.
Heading level 3 registration deadlines online.
So when I'm
Tuesday,
filling out a form, I can get the ballot this way and fill out the ballot and then print it out. And then I've done that privately without anyone sitting over me and seeing how I'm voting or controlling my vote. I mean, what's to say that someone who fills out my ballot fills it out the way I want? Think about an abusive relationship where one person wants to vote Democratic and another wants to vote Republican. Get that spouse to fill it out and maybe they fill it out the way you want, maybe they don't. So it's better if you can do it independently, and the privacy is a huge issue.
05 heading level 2.
Okay, I will stop sharing. That's a quick look at a
Audio
screen
settings button
reader and how it works. That was a good website. A bad website will be full of things like button, link, image, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, ABC, these long strings of stuff you have to sit through. But that site's pretty well done, I have to say.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Patty. That was
Yeah.
really good. And
No problem.
you are still sharing your screen?
Information
I'm
Google
getting
Chrome.
rid of
Alabama
it.
voting list.
Okay, that's fine.
Audio settings button drop
I
down.
think Patty raised a good point
Okay.
that it is that's part of the reason we have a private ballot, right? No matter what your significant other or your family member, whoever you live with thinks, the minute you walk into that ballot booth, you get to vote however you want. Whether you tell them the truth or not, if they ask later, is all up to you. But you have that right. That's the one place that no one else gets to tell you how you should do something, and no one else knows how you did it.
So it's just about 8 o'clock. Does anyone else have questions for our panelists tonight? We have had some interesting comments in the chat. I'll just mention a couple of them as a parent and a medical professional. Here's another question. How can an intellectually disabled person understand the issues and truly cast his vote? Well, I do, I don't know that we have anybody mentally disabled here, but I think there are a lot of people who have different types of mental disabilities, which should not prevent them from voting and caring and understanding the issues.
So I've actually done some work in this area along with a guy named Jae-Jin Pak, who's well known in the disability community here. The key is presenting the choices and the information to people with intellectual disabilities in a way that's broken down so that it's easier to comprehend. And there are lots of forms that are doing that now. So I mean, there's lots of people who work, who get married, who raise children, who have intellectual disabilities. And if you can do all those things, you can definitely vote.
And I'd like to say something on that too. When Elena and can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. When Elena and I met with Rev Up with the AAPD, we had a lovely lady who has Down syndrome, and she was talking about how what she does with any information. She actually has a program that she can tell it to put this into plain language. Me.
Mhm.
And so then she can keep somewhat either bracket it or scaffold it so that she can keep asking it to whether it be generalized or to make it more specific so that she can understand that. And I thought that that was amazing because I don't even believe that it was something so much assistive technology it's not even specialized. I think it's something that's generally available. And I thought that was
Chat
amazing.
GPT does it.
It's the chat
That's what I was
GPT.
gonna say. They can have it break it down for you
Any
too.
of the AI
And even
models.
say,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
thought that was amazing. Thank you. I just know that she mentioned it and I thought, wow, okay, well, like you said, problem solving because you have to do that. And this woman was amazing. So
I want to thank some of the people who were here who answered questions in the chat. We had somebody ask if election judges were trained, and we had an election judge say, well, yes, the election judges are well trained in Will County on using
Thank
the
you.
accessibility materials. So, does anyone else have any questions for this evening? This has been very informative. We're very.
I have a question for
Yes,
Rebecca.
Elena.
What do you know that obviously you could speak to Will County specifically, but are the things that Will County is doing basic rules and requirements for all counties in Illinois for the most part? Or what are the things that are pervasive throughout the state that anyone in the state of Illinois could expect or federally required, so that if somebody's watching this video later and they're from another state, what are the things that they could expect to be present that would make the voting more accessible for them?
Sure, absolutely. For the state of Illinois, I'm not, because our state is, Illinois does everything differently by county, as we've mentioned. Everyone needs to have a assisted ballot marking device. So they have to have one that someone can go up to, listen to, be able to mark their ballot independently using a voting machine. So that's required across the board. Curbside voting is also required across the board as well. Based on your size, about a lot of things are based on like how many people live within that county. So if it's only like 500 people living in that county, sometimes those rules are going to be a little bit different than when there's, like, for instance, Will County has over 400,000 registered voters. So those things are going to be a little bit different, but they do have to offer it. Vote by mail, accessible vote by mail, all of that is required by the state of Illinois. Everybody has to do it regardless. So a lot of what we do is exactly the same. The use of, the training of the judges, the use of like the wheelchair accessible voting booths and the magnifiers. I believe that's specific to Will County. That's kind of what we do to help out, and having people come in and events and things like that is specific to us. But the touch writer, the ADA machine, the vote by mail, the voting aid notice that we have to post at our locations, that's all required by the state of Illinois.
I have another question.
Sure.
So say you show up to your polling place, and for some reason, one of the things is not being followed, or you are not provided the correct assistance, but it is voting day, so there is not another day an option to go. What recourse do you have as a person with a disability to still be able to cast your vote on election day?
So what they can do is they call our office immediately. They tell us the issue that they are having, and we will contact the election judges at that polling place, and we will make sure that it's being addressed and taken care of properly.
Is the number for the election authority of that county available at every voting place? And if so, where would you locate it?
So I'm not sure if we have it, I don't think we have it listed at our locations, but it is something definitely that we can do. So if you're right, if you're, you know, if you feel like you're in violation, we can put our phone number right up there for people to call. That's a great
I
idea.
think that would be an incredible asset. And I mean, I don't know if that's something you could work if you have counterparts in other counties that you could talk to them, that a sticker or something could be put up and said, you know, if you are encountering a problem due to disability or you feel a discrimination, please call this number and we will assist you immediately or something. Because I think sometimes, I mean, I don't accept deliverance of prejudice or anything like, you know, I don't notice it myself, but I'm sure for some folks, it can be very upsetting in the moment, and then it's hard to know what to do. So to have something that's prominently displayed, I think would be very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. We can absolutely make that happen. That's not a problem. And we'll talk with other people. Today I just talked with DuPage County, so that's something that we could try to bring across the board to all of the counties. And there are meetings that each specific like region of county clerks we have. So it's something I might be able to bring up to the State Board of Elections as well.
Excellent. Thank
Yeah.
you.
No,
So
thank you.
this is Patty, a couple points. Number one, if you're just gonna put up a sticker, it isn't gonna do people like me any good. You're gonna wanna do something that's also non-visually accessible.
Okay.
The second point is there's a vast difference in the training that polling judges get around disability across the state. And I can only speak to Cook County, but Cook County actually has been having people with disabilities come in and talk to the polling judges, kind of like you're doing here. And I think that's incredibly impactful because it shows people why it matters. It isn't just part of their training that's in the book and maybe given to them on the day they get training, but they now understand that what they do really impacts real life people with disabilities. So
Yeah.
my urge would be for other counties to reach out to the disability community and have people come and talk to your judges, even if it's just 10 minutes. You know, putting a face to the issue makes a difference.
Yeah. No,
And then finally, if you have been discriminated against, you believe you have, or you think you've had trouble voting, DOJ is the place to report it because the Department of Justice has been very active in this arena, especially in the last couple of years.
I will
Yeah.
also add, being more from a rural area, that, you know, sometimes you might run into it probably more in a rural area than you are going to in an urban area where there's less resources, we're more stretched out. Sometimes you have to go longer distances to get to places. And we don't have the same public transportation that you do in a, you know, Chicagoland area. So again, that's where planning comes into play, whether it be looking up the number ahead of time, just in case you run into problems. Or again, another reason I early vote is if I run into problems, I can come back.
I like Brandy early vote for that reason. Sorry, Brandy.
Yeah, and I also, you know, they have been very creative. Last time I early voted, I couldn't for some reason get the machine to recognize when I touched it, so they had Q-tips. Never would have thought of using a Q-tip, but I could hold it between two of my fingers and use it to press, and it helped me vote. So sometimes out of the box thinking on the minute by people who are there is very helpful. But if they've never encountered that issue, they might not think of it right away. So, you know, maybe don't be, I know sometimes, especially individuals with disabilities are not always very vocal or don't want to cause a scene or cause a problem. I don't have a problem with that personally, but I also understand it. But don't be afraid to speak up for yourself. And you can do it very politely and just say, this isn't working, what can you do, or can we try this? You know, you can suggest alternatives also if you think it'll work for you, or it has worked in the past, and hopefully they'll be able to accommodate you in some way.
Right. Yeah, and we have this for signing, we have the stylus, so that might be something that would work too on the touch screen.
I do believe we're lucky in Will and DuPage counties to have excellent election judges. When I've poll watched, they have always gone out of their way to help everyone. So I think the idea of speaking up, but I think the idea of, anything you can do to empower an individual voter to feel comfortable and know what they can do. So I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I particularly want to thank Brandy, Rebecca, and Patti for sharing their experiences and a lot of information that we wouldn't have had otherwise. Thank you, Tricia and Elena, for helping us put all of this together. If you enjoyed this event, I hope you'll consider joining the League of Women Voters, or at least following us on social media. You can find us at lwvnaperville.org. And if you enjoyed tonight's program, I hope you'll look for more information about our regular events on most second Wednesdays of the month. Thank you very much. I hope everyone has a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.